This is why no one can escape this prison. So normally when you get cocky like this, somebody ends up escaping from your prison. Okay, let's check this video out.
Here are the 20 most dangerous prisons in the world. Number 20. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia. Despite its rather friendly name, the Black Dolphin Prison is the host of the most horrifying convicts in Russia. Currently, it holds around 700 inmates. Between them all, they've killed over 3,500 people, at least that we know of. The prison is located near the border of Russia with Kazakhstan. It was built in the early 18th century and has been operating since then. Nowadays, the inmates are mainly notorious pedophiles, Chechen terrorists, serial murderers, and cannibals. But this is why no one can escape this prison. Every inmate shares a 50 square foot cell with another inmate only. Well, to be more precise, they share a cell within a cell, since once the main door is open, they have to go through 3 other sets of steel doors to get to the living compartment.
And for me, it ain't even about, oh, you can't escape it. Who wants to live like that, bro? Who wants that type? I don't want to live, give up my bed for that.
There are light and motion detectors everywhere, even in the cells, where the prisoners are also constantly being watched 24/7 via security cameras. Also, the guards do rounds and check on every inmate every 15 minutes. The prisoners are allowed only 90 minutes per day out of their cell, during which the guards inspect the cells for prohibited items. The prison yard is actually another cell, and the guards take them there blindfolded and bent so they don't learn the prison's layout. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell right now.
Again, who wants to, you gotta blindfold me, everywhere is a cage.
Or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Number 19. Arthur Road Jail, India. The Mumbai Central Prison is the largest penitentiary in Mumbai. It was built by the British in 1926 on 2 acres of land in the southern side of Mumbai. Currently, it's surrounded by houses and residential buildings, making it totally a full part of the Indian capital. Also known as Arthur Road Jail, the facility is a maximum security prison. Originally, it was intended to hold no more than 1,074 inmates, but like most prisons in the world, it became overcrowded. Nowadays, it's estimated to have over 2,900 incarcerated inmates. The sanitation and medical facilities are too far and not enough for its current population load. A huge number of inmates don't have access to natural light nor to ventilation. And regardless of multiple plans and proposals to relocate the inmates into a newly built jail, 8 new barracks were added in order to increase the capacity by 200 inmates more.
But think about it, right? And yes, we have our rights as human beings, right? But think about it. They're complaining because of the facilities, right? What makes you think they're gonna get in a rush for you? They're not. They're gonna say, yeah, we acknowledge things need to be a little bit better and this, that, and the third, but they ain't gonna get in no rush because they're gonna look at you as prisoners. Stop putting yourself in these situations.
Famous Bollywood actors charged for illegal arms possession, international terrorists, organized crime leaders, and famous businessmen, this overcrowded melting pot led to multiple territorial wars inside the prison. Like in 2006, when inmates affiliated with the notorious Dawood Ibrahim's gang confronted other inmates belonging to a major Mumbai crime syndicate, which led authorities to start separating prisoners based on their gang affiliations to avoid bigger clashes. Number 18. Ciudad Barrios Prison, El Salvador. The Ciudad Barrios Prison is located in the capital of El Salvador, San Salvador. Like most prisons in the world, it is overcrowded. It was originally built for a capacity of 800 inmates, but currently it houses over 2,500 prisoners. However, unlike most prisons, this one is exclusively filled with Mara Salvatrucha gang members. The MS-13 gang has the reputation of being one of the deadliest gangs in the world. The gang was originally founded in the 80s in Los Angeles by by a few Salvadoran immigrants. They were exiled in the USA after fleeing the Civil War that lasted over a decade. Once the war ended in 1992, they came back to their country, bringing with them the gang culture. Most of the inmates in Ciudad Barrios are drug lords, murderers, and weapon dealers for the MS-13 gang. The Mara Salvatrucha gang is so feared in El Salvador that they were left to run the prison by themselves and establish their own rules. Prison guards.
Where have you ever heard anything like that? Huh? When have you ever heard that other than the saying, how that saying go, the inmates run the asylum? Like, that's the only place you've heard that, but that was always a quote. Like, and if you've never heard of that MS gang, you must never watch those shows that came on TV back in the day. Because they talked about them before. That is a well-known organization. But darn, like, they running themselves. They gotta police themselves.
And the army guarded from the outside, making sure nobody comes out, but they don't really interfere with what happens inside the prison. And inside, the gang members and leaders run their own society. They even have their own bakery, hospital, rehab centers, and workshops where they build toys, but also their own furniture. Number 16. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison, Kenya. The Kamiti Maximum Security Prison is located around 80 kilometers west of Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Geographically, the country is located between Somalia and South Sudan, two neighbors that have been dealing with terrorism and armed piracy threats for the last decades. Despite being built on a relatively small-sized land of 4.9 square kilometers, the Kamiti Prison was originally intended to hold around 1,400 inmates, although it's currently estimated to hold over 3,600 prisoners. Built in the 50s, the Kamiti Prison is considered the largest of the 10 maximum security facilities in Kenya.
Hey, nobody believes in the fire code, right? Like overcapacity with the fire. Nobody believes in that, huh?
Behind its tall and thick concrete walls, murderers, sex offenders, pirates, and terrorists are being held there, and many executions took place there. The Kamiti Prison is the most dreadful and terrifying in Kenya. From one side, the inmates have to live in very poor conditions, like having to carry buckets of water since there's no stable running water most of the time. And from the other side, the inmates managed to build a network of drug and phone smuggling. Phones that the inmates were recently discovered using to run scams with from inside the prison. Although officials denied such activities, they've recently decided to increase the facility's security by installing a new biometric security system, along with new CCTV cameras, even in the cells. Number 5.
And I've heard about the phones getting into prisons. I'm always fascinated by that. But can't they put something like around the prisons to like cancel cell signals that way? But I guess that would be then bad for the guards and the, you know what I mean? The warden, if anything ever popped off. So I don't know. Just a thought.
Teen. Bangkok Prison, Bangkok, Thailand. Ironically named by the West, the Bangkok Hilton Prison, Bangkok Prison is also named the Big Tiger in Asian popular culture, since it's well known to completely devour the inmates' hopes and lives. Built in the early 1930s, it was originally envisioned by King Rama V to be the home of the worst murderers and criminals. The chances of survival are almost as thin as the chances of escaping from this prison. Inmates get one meal a day, a bowl of rice and soup. To get more food, or just to get some food, inmates need to arrange payments with the cantina. Located in the outskirts of Bangkok, it was built for 3,500 inmates originally. Currently,
but you know what happens that, right? Everybody else is given rice and soup, but you somehow make contact with somebody on the outside who gives you a little more money. You can go to commissary or canteen. Or canteen as they call it. You get more food. That makes you a target. Now you're a target. People are going to try to do something to you. So it's like, do you really want that extra food? Because now your life may be on the line.
It houses over 8,000 inmates. Most of them are facing 25 to life. In 2012, the death penalty by shooting was abolished, but replaced with lethal injections. From day one, inmates get iron shackles attached and locked to their legs. The new prisoners have to wear them during their first 3 months, but those who are facing death row will keep the shackles until the end of their sentence. Although it's no longer applied for the new inmates since 2013, it's still applicable to those on death row, which means 10% of the total number of prisoners. Number 13. The Penitentiary of New Mexico, PNM, USA. Built in 1885 in Santa Fe County, the PNM is the only maximum security prison in New Mexico. The PNM has 5 max security blocks built for 790 men of the highest security classification of New Mexico criminals. Even though the death penalty was repealed in 2009, from the beginning, all New Mexico death rows are in the Level 6 Supermax area. Throughout the years, the penitentiary has seen the most violent riots in the history of U.S. prisons. Many believe its history made it a haunted place, especially after various witnesses reported doors opening and closing on their own, ghostly voices and footsteps, and other unexplained events. In 1922, 1 inmate was killed and 5 injured after being shot by the tower guards. Inmates were refusing to go back to their cells in a protest against the poor food and the use of excessive force by the guards. In 1953, the inmates again protested against the excessive use of force. 2 prisoners were killed by the guards then, and it led to the demolition of the original main block a few years later. In 1980, a 2-day riot resulted in the death of 33 inmates. Some were horrifically butchered and dismembered. Others were decapitated and even burned alive. Number 12. Rikers Island.
And that's because like they keep saying, overcrowdedness. So if something were to go down, a lot of times these guards are outnumbered. Outnumbered. What are you gonna do? Especially if they been watching you and they timed it, and now you're in a compromised position where help is all the way across the prison, or if it looks like a prison compound, they're like 4 buildings over. It's just you. Like, span of control is nowhere near where it should be.
Prison. Situated on Rikers Island between Queens and the Bronx, Rikers Island Prison is New York's main prison. Built in 1932, it's estimated to currently be the residence of a daily average of 10,000 inmates. Over 85% of them are actually awaiting trial and haven't been convicted yet, which also means that many of the inmates are there for non-violent crimes and/or are still awaiting bail. Despite a yearly budget of $860 million, the facilities are in horrific conditions, according to 14 local lawmakers that recently visited the premises. Shower stalls used as cells, fecal matter and urine on the floor, and dead cockroaches next to rotten food in the hallways. Esius Johnson, 24, died of what appears to be a drug overdose after telling his family that he sees no way out of Rikers Island. Didn't take Esius to any of the 3 court appearances he had, preventing him from paying his $1 bail. According to official reports, 12 inmates died in 2021 inside the prison, and in 2015, 9,424 assaults.
$1 bail? I've never heard that before. Is that true? I've heard of people being in jail and their bail is extremely low because they don't have the funds and nobody will help them. But I've never heard of $1 though. I never even thought it would be that low.
Were reported. Number 10. San Quentin Prison, USA. San Quentin Prison is a state prison for men located north of San Francisco in Marin County. Inaugurated in July 1852, it is, to this day, the oldest prison in California. It's also the largest in the United States and the only death row for male inmates. It's referred to as the Arena by the prisoners. It's equipped with a gas chamber, but starting in 1996, all executions are now delivered through lethal injection, and the last carried out execution dates back to 2006. In In 2005, the court ordered a report, and it was discovered that the prison was old, antiquated, dirty, poorly staffed, poorly maintained with inadequate medical space and equipment, and overcrowded.
This is the moment when a whole tier will erupt. This is a bad time.
Nothing but orange up there. Orange jumpsuits is all you saw.
Later that year, the warden was fired for threatening a doctor with disciplinary action as he spoke with attorneys about problems with healthcare delivery at the prison. But San Quentin State Prison has quite the story with death row inmates and serial killers, with 33 executions carried out until 2006 and 15 death row inmates that were either killed or committed suicide. Currently, it holds at least 62 known serial killers. 55 inmates more have either died of a natural death or have been transferred, and 12 died recently following the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020. Number 9. Antanimura Prison, Madagascar. Antanimura Prison is also known as the Central Prison of Antanimura, and it's officially called Maison Centrale Antanimura. Located in Antananarivo, the capital of Madagascar, it holds a maximum of 800 inmates. In
They don't even look like they got much room to move around. That's too many.
2019, it was reported that more than 4,000 detainees were being held there. Many of them are still awaiting trial. It's so overcrowded that during nights, prisoners are jammed like sardines in a can, and turning over is only allowed on command. This prison is one of...
Not only am I in prison, now when I get ready to go to sleep and I want to turn over, to which most people don't even think about it when they do it, it happens subconsciously in your sleep. You gotta wait till a signal is given to be able to turn. Again, who wants to live like that?
the last known homes to the plague, the Black Death that ravaged Europe and the world during the 14th century. Its lack of hygiene has been criticized by international organizations. More than 50% of the inmates are yet to be convicted, and the population is counted manually. The logistics system is antiquated, if not non-existent. It houses men, women, and children. The prison is separated in blocks and provides one meal per day of just boiled cassava. A U.S. human rights report found that chronic malnutrition is the leading cause of death among prisoners in Madagascar, and that the condition affects up to 2/3 of the inmate. The prisoners share the facility with rats, fleas, cockroaches, and all kinds of pest-spreading vermin. It is a nightmare of hygiene, security, safety, and health. Number 8. Butyrka Prison, Russia. The Butyrskaya Prison, aka the Butyrka Prison, is located in a very central district in Moscow. Although it's believed that the prison was built in 1771, it started to take its current shape from around 1879. And it's safe to say that even nowadays, it is still considered Moscow's largest prison. Right before the 1980s Moscow Olympics, authorities wanted to deflect the visitors' attention from the prison, so they built an apartment building all around it. But the fortress still made itself felt and seen in the neighborhood, which consequently made it easier for the inmates in the women's section to hit on the men walking by that area. And throughout the centuries, many historically notable inmates have made the guest list of the penitentiary. From CSKA Moscow football players recently to political dissidents, human rights advocates, poets, filmmakers, and even Hitler's favorite nephew, Heinrich Hitler, who was captured in 1942 while trying to retrieve radio equipment from a Soviet army post. Originally, cells were meant to hold up to 10 inmates, but it's currently estimated that each cell has an average of 100 people. For a long time,
That's not even close. How do you go from 10 to 100? That's not close.
From a Soviet army post. Originally, cells were meant to hold up to 10 inmates, but it's currently estimated that each cell has an average of 100 people. For a long time, overcrowding isn't Butyrka's only problem, but
at that point, you're probably sleeping standing up.
Also health issues associated particularly with the spread of diseases like tuberculosis and HIV. Number 7. Karanjiru Penitentiary, Brazil. Karanjiru Penitentiary, officially Casa de Detenção de São Paulo, alternatively Sao Paulo House of Detention, was a prison located in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The prison was designed and built by Samuel Jas Neves in 1920 when it was still considered a model prison designed to uphold the new standards of the criminal code that was reviewed in 1890. It operated from 1956 for a total of 46 years. At its peak, it became South America's largest penitentiary, housing over 8,000 inmates. In 1992, it was the site of the Karanjiru massacre, where military police stormed the penitentiary after a prison riot. The massacre left 111 dead prisoners. Drauzio Varela, a noted Brazilian physician, volunteered as an unpaid physician in Karanjiru from 1989 to 2001, in particular to address its AIDS epidemic. He wrote a book, Karanjiru Station, describing his own experiences there and the dreadful conditions of the inmates. The book was later made into a movie, Karanjiru, released in 2003. Both were highly regarded by critics and the public. The prison was demolished on December 8, 2002. One block was left intact to be used as a museum, now open to the public and accessible via Karanjiru metro station. Today, the ancient site of the old penitentiary left its place to Parque da Juventude complex. Number 6. La Santé Prison, Paris, France. La Santé Prison was built in 1867 and was meant to keep around 500 people enclosed. But despite—
I don't know why I think prison in France. In my mind, when you hear Paris, France, you think of vacationing. So automatically in my mind, I'm thinking, well, they may have at least some decent food at least. But quickly snapped out of it because no, this is a prison, bro. So no, they're not getting that gourmet food either. But my mind automatically thought that for some reason. Sicko, I know.
Despite being located within the French capital of Paris, it got renovated a few times in order to increase its capacity from 500 to 2,000 inmates. Public executions by guillotine were held outside the prison walls until it got banned in 1939. Up until a few years ago, La Santé blocks were drastically racially segregated based on the inmates' parents' origins. There were 4 blocks, and they called them the West Europeans block, the Black Africans block, the North Africans block, and the rest of the world block. For a long time, La Santé's suicide rate was up to 7 times higher than the rest of the prisons in France. With a record high of 124 suicides in 1999 versus 24 in California that same year, La Santé Prison gained the reputation of being a hopelessly violent and ruthless place. If you want a psychologist to give you drugs, they send you right away, said an inmate to a journalist during a visit. They dope us up to keep us quiet. But if you need a dentist, you have to wait a month. Wow, I mean, that sounds almost like a Shutter Island scenario, right?
All right.
Number 5. The Maracaibo National, Venezuela. The Maracaibo National Prison, also known as Sabaneta Prison, was a notoriously violent prison in the city of Maracaibo, Venezuela. It is allegedly under the legislation of the Ministry of Prison Systems, most recently under Minister Iris Varela from 1958 to 2013. But the truth is, like many other Venezuelan prisons, it's more of a state within a state, with an independent tribunal, caste system, rules, laws, economy, and even currency. It was severely overcrowded, with inadequate access to medical care, food, and clean water. Violence among prisoners was common. Until a kingpin took over, gangs of inmates had control over the prison and were led by a pran, or inmate leader. The prison was closed after 55 years of operation due to government intervention and is now being converted into a museum. It witnessed the rise and falls of many local tyrants, riots, and raids by government forces. The unrest was constant under the rule of the government, with authorities claiming it to be gang violence among prisoners. Mocho Edwin was the pran in Maracaibo Prison at the prison's closing. He was first incarcerated in 2006, but was soon after released in 2007. Since then, he was sent to Maracaibo for committing triple homicide. Edwin was known for drug sales and prostitution throughout the prison and connections with the outside world.
It's the first time we've heard that on video.
Number 3. Tadmor Prison, Syria. Tadmor Prison was located in Palmyra in the deserts of eastern Syria, approximately 200 kilometers northeast of Damascus. The structures were originally built as military barracks by the French Mandate forces. Tadmor was known for harsh conditions, extensive human rights abuse, torture, and summary executions. In 2001, a report was submitted by Amnesty International regarding Tadmor Prison. They called it a source of despair, torture, and degrading treatment. In 2015, it was taken over, then destroyed by militants of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL. During the 1980s, Tadmor Prison housed thousands of Syrian prisoners, both political and criminal. In 1980, it was also the scene of the infamous Tadmor Prison massacre, a violent episode led by Rifat al-Assad the day after the Syrian branch of the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood narrowly failed in an attempt to assassinate his brother, President Hafez al-Assad. Members of units of the defense brigades under the command of Rifat al-Assad raided Tadmor Prison at dawn and slaughtered around 1,000 prisoners in the cells and the dormitories. The massacre is well known throughout Syria. Tadmor Prison was closed in 2001 and all remaining inmates were transferred to other Syrian prisons. It was reopened in 2011 and 350 individuals arrested for participation in anti-government demonstrations were transferred there for interrogation and detainment. Number 2. Vladimir Central Prison, Russia. Vladimir Prison was established during the Russian Empire in 1783 by decree of Empress Catherine II. It is located about 160 kilometers or 100 miles northeast of Moscow. In 1906, it became known as Vladimir Central and held political prisoners. It is currently the largest prison by capacity in Russia, with a capacity for a maximum of 1,220 detainees. However, it is said to be surpassed by Kresty 2, currently under construction in Kolpina, St. Petersburg. At the beginning of 1921, shortly after the rise of the Bolsheviks to power, Vladimir Central became the first of several special-purpose prisons intended to house political dissidents. Vladimir Central was later made part of the system of special camps and prisons instaured by the USSR Council of Ministers after issuing a special resolution in 1948. The resolution widened the range of political prisoners for the detention in Vladimir, including spies, saboteurs, terrorists, Trotskyites, Mensheviks, socialist revolutionaries, anarchists, ethnic nationalists, white immigrants, participants in other anti-Soviet organizations, and those with ties to any anti-Soviet or enemy activities. In service documents, the name of the prison was listed as Vladimir Special Prison MGB of the USSR. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the prison was reverted to a regular detention facility. In 1996, a museum about Vladimir Prison was opened on the prison grounds. Number 1. Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
Yeah, it ain't gonna get no worse than this one right here, probably.
Guantanamo Bay is a military prison located within Guantanamo Bay Naval Base under the jurisdiction of the USA. It is one of the most controversial and secretive prisons in the world. It's allegedly made to detain terrorists and terrorist suspects. The controversy comes from the fact that the United States does not honor the Geneva Convention. It was established in 2002 by President George W. Bush and his administration following the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Thus, it houses mostly Al-Qaeda and Taliban sympathizers, members, or suspects. Considering its purpose, indefinite detention without trial and torture are common. Every detainee is either or suspected to be a terrorist, hence all means are allowed to extract information regarding the organizations they're a part of. The next president, Barack Obama, promised that Guantanamo Bay would be closed, which found strong opposition from the US Congress. During the mandate of Barack Obama, the number of inmates went from 245 to 41. This step was rendered totally null when Donald Trump signed an executive order to keep the detention camp open indefinitely. Despite the ruckus and controversy surrounding the camp and all the breaches and disdain to basic human rights, as well as the innovations and progress made in the field of torture, authorities still insist that they're keeping a morally upright and humane relation towards the prisoners. As you can see, prisons can sometimes be unfair on their inmates. Now granted, they are criminals and deserve to pay for what they've done, but don't you think that the prison system sometimes make things worse instead of better? What?
That's definitely a good question. Do you think the conditions they're in or situations, the way layouts are and the overcrowdedness and different things make the prisoners worse before they came in? Or do you see any good done to make a prisoner go from doing something terribly, horribly, inhumanely wrong to being rehabilitated and coming out the other side and being a totally changed person? Because that's what I always thought prisons was for. You know what I mean? Not only to get you off the street for a heinous crime that you committed, but also to put you in a program or something to help change that. And you're not released until we feel as though we're comfortable with releasing you back into society. That's what I thought prisons was. But to me, it just sounds like a holding tank, a huge holding tank. And that's it. Some ain't even a supervised holding tank. Y'all police yourselves. So that's just the scary things, man. But it still needs to be held up in front of people's faces because some people glorify that prison lifestyle. And it's cool. It's not cool because they glorify it to the next generation that's up and coming, so the cycle continues. All I'm saying is, man, this ain't the life. Promise you, this ain't what you want. Y'all get at me. Let me know what you think, and stick around and stay tuned. So next one, I'm gone. Peace.